Hello, I'm back. Just when you thought the fun was over with the game, there's more fun to ensue right now. So, in scene 3, Ode 3, things get a little complicated. So we're going to spend some time reviewing that because it's really the first time that Hymen comes into the plot. So, I would like you to take out your Scene 3, Ode 3 study guide questions, because right now through a cause and effect diagram we're going to be looking at study guide questions 1 through 9. That's 1 through 9 in your Scene 3 study guide. So the cause and effect diagram that we're going to do is going to start off with a balloon. So to review, I'd like you to actually draw a balloon landscape on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So my artistic abilities are for sure going to be challenged through this, so there's going to be a big balloon. So you can draw that now. On this balloon, what it's going to represent is Hymen's facades, arguments, and feelings. The outer layer of the balloon, representing Hymen's facades, arguments, and feelings, that's going to be his persuasive strategies, because it's riding along the outside. It's the fragile layer of the balloon that they're just strategies. They're just things that Hymen is covering up his true thought or his true air, which is what's making up the balloon on the inside. So the outer layer is nothing more than a manifestation of what he's trying to do persuasively. So, again, just so you can see it in writing, if that helps you. The layers of the balloon represent Hymen's arguments because they are the bright color, I chose red, exposed to the world, and inside, that's Hymen's air, his vitality. The air, the inside of the balloon, most closely relates to what he's thinking. It's concealed within the outer layer. So knowing that the outer layer represents persuasion, again, take a look at your study guide questions. What strategies does Hymen use to get his dad off of the defensive? What does he do to disarm Creon? So think about that. Discuss. Pause me. He uses, scrolling down, he butters up his father through flattery and deference. So I was thinking, like, what color should the balloon be, since it's buttering up his father through flattery and deference? So since you can't contribute, so I have to do it now, I'm just going to choose for you and say that because he chooses to butter up his dad through flattering him, I'm going to make it yellow, actually. So you write in the outer edge of your balloon, flattery and deference, and let's get a quote example of how he flatters his father and or how he shows him deference, and that's showing somebody respect, respectful submission. So despite Hymen's excellent strategies, how does Creon's reaction to Hymen's fawning, Hymen's buttering him up, illustrate a flaw in Creon's character? How does the reaction illustrate a flaw? Pause me. If you need some guidance, you can turn to page 792 and look at lines 29 through 44. What specifically, if you haven't discussed it already, seems flawed there? So for Creon, he shows without a doubt his inflexible nature. Anyone that challenges his will is characterized as an anarchist, and thus he is a needle in this diagram. So while this is Hymen's argument on the outside, you should have some text here, Creon represents a needle. So I cheated because, you know, I don't think I can draw a needle very well, so I used a nail. So that's Creon, and what you should write by Creon is that this represents his inflexible nature. Anyone that challenges his will is an anarchist. So you can write your specific example. I'm going to put my little note there, which will obviously be bigger on yours, hanging out up there. Okay, so you can see that. So that's where I would put it if I were taking notes with you. I'm just going to make that hang up there. So now we see Creon and how he how he relates to this, but we have to go back to Hymen. We only have the outside of his balloon. The inside, that's where his real thoughts and feelings lie. So for the inside of the balloon, while Hymen still employs persuasive strategy, the facade that he started with is over. What arguments does Hymen explain to Creon to demonstrate Creon's need to change his ruling? So take a second silently on your own and fill up your balloon with the arguments that Hymen tries to explain to Creon to demonstrate the need for Creon to change his ruling about Polynices. So let's take a couple of volunteers on those answers. Pause me, please, and see what you guys have to say there as a group. So you should have need to change ruling. I'm going to give you what I think. So if you didn't talk about what you think yet, you shut me up by hitting that big old pause button. Otherwise, I shall continue talking. Okay, so text box. Here's my stuff. Hymen argues that Antigone's life should be spared because no woman has ever died so unreasonably and suffered so shameful a death for a generous act. That's a quote from him. He says that her honor should not be punished, but it should be hailed, her being Antigone. And while he lines himself with this opinion, he emphasizes how the people of Thebes share these feelings and are simply afraid of Creon's temper. He says, "You are not in a position to know everything." That's the inside of our balloon. So, Hymen's a smart kid, and like his father, he's savvy. He put out these logical arguments to try and get Creon on his same page. But really, what is it that's motivating Hymen? What does he really care about? Somebody help me. That's right. He is being motivated by love. So we're going to make some little lips by this mouthpiece here. Those are lips. That's what's blowing into the balloon. And thus, while Hymen's argument is likely true, he is also motivated by his love for Antigone and vested interest. She is his bride-to-be. So this love makes the closest item to his lips that goes unsaid. So I'm going to write something like that, or you should write something like that, hanging over by the lip area. So now we're back to the needle. We have heard Hymen's logical arguments. We know what his persuasive strategies are, even though they only thinly veil, excuse me, my phone wasn't on silent. They only thinly veil what his actual reason is, which is love for Antigone. So now we have Creon back at the center, this little needle guy here. What are his reactions? Where's his temper come in? Volunteer some reactions. So hopefully you pulled out some of these quotes. What this needle now emphasizes is his inflexible nature and also his temper. So write that down too. He says, "You're just a boy. A city can't teach me how to rule. You're being controlled by a woman. My voice is the only one to live by." And the stage direction here is that he's completely out of control. So here is his reactions up by the needle. Now what happens when this tempery, fiery, inflexible nature comes into contact with this facade of an outer covering of this balloon? What happens? What is that onomatopoeia? Everybody? Hope there wasn't crickets. Pop! Blam! Explosion. So that's what we're going to examine now. The aftermath, the pop. So in the pop, I would like you, I didn't mind to doodle something approximately looking like that. What are the reactions of this conversation? What are the consequences when the meeting of the balloon and the needle come into contact with one another? What are the reactions? So talk about that and write them in here. In my diagram, I use kapow. Hopefully you've talked about those. Here are my findings. Hymen says, "Her death will cause another. You will never see me again." So Sun's out of Dodge.